All right, guys and gals, welcome back to the episode 4 of the Harmony Outdoors podcast. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to go into what we call the payoff. And what that is for us is like a listener success. And we've got a young gentleman on today by the name of Ethan Floyd. Been a supporter for Harmony from the rip, really. So ever since day one. So we got him joining in today. And then Brett's here and Hunter's here. So we got the whole group. How y'all doing today, fellas?
Doing good.
Can't complain.
Sir, just make it.
Doing good.
Horton's chillaxing in the car again.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have them Wi-Fi problems.
That's the traveling man right there. He's always in the car.
Yeah.
Always in the car. All right, Mr. Ethan, tell us a little bit about yourself, bud. How old you are, where you from, where you like to hunt, and all that good business.
So I'm Ethan Floyd. I'm 23. I'm a firefighter. Mainly I like to deer hunt places with cutovers initially. If I don't got it, hardwoods mainly. South Alabama is where I've mainly been at all my life. Ever since I was a kid, we've always had a hunting club in South Alabama, so I've always known that terrain, how the deer act down there. A little up here around North Alabama, Northeast, it's a little different than down there, but
oh yeah,
it's a lot different. Yeah. So obviously, we know you do a lot of deer hunting. What other kind of hunting you do?
I got into duck hunting about 5-6 years ago. That lasted maybe 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's fun to go do, but some places you can't really get to because we don't have a boat or nothing. But mainly I do deer hunting and turkey hunting.
Where y'all duck hunt at?
Lake Weiss, and every now and then I've been, or once, to Guntersville, but try to go there a little bit more often. It's just like any public land. It's competitive down there, but we mainly hunt around Weiss Lake mostly.
Good deal. So let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about your success. Seeing how this is what we're titling this is the payoff, and like Brandon said, Ethan's kind of been a supporter from day one. So let's jump into you got a big boy behind you. Is that a 9-point?
It is.
When did you kill that one? Tell us a little bit about that story. Let's just jump into that. Tell us a little bit about that deer, and how that came about for you, and how, the grunt call possibly aided you in that situation.
So we were on public land in Alabama, and really didn't have a figuring out where we were going to go. And one of the guys at the camp, he showed me a pin, was like, hey, go and find this place. Showed me where it was at. I marked it on my phone. So 3 o'clock in the morning, it's completely dark, going through the woods, driving the truck, and I'm glancing down at my phone and see a cutover off right before where the spot where he told me to go. So I just rolled the dice, pulled into there, went out there in that cutover. Really couldn't tell much from it walking out in it, but just found me a good tree to climb, and I climbed up in it. Was sitting there. As soon as it got daylight, I see a spot walking through the cutover. Started using the grunt call a little bit. Then started seeing some more deer come out in it, and about 8:30 rolled around. It was that same spike. He stayed out there mainly the whole morning, and started noticing there was a doe come out there, and he started to run her a little bit. And it was toward the end of the season, so I was starting to get ready to get down, because another thing, it was pouring down rain all morning. So I was going to take the
I remember that.
I was going to take the doe that morning, and I was getting ready to set up on her, and kind of something just told me to look back at the back of the clear cut. So I got my binos out, glanced back toward the back of the clear cut, and then there's that big boy standing there looking at me. And I start getting set up.
How far
on him.
away was he when he came out?
He was in between probably 250 to 300 yards.
Okay, so you're on a rifle hunt.
Yes, rifle
Correct.
hunt.
Okay.
And
All right, continue.
he kind of went out of sight, and he was looking, I guess you would say, kind of glancing clear cut, because it wasn't really, I guess, about waist high, in between waist and chest high. So he's kind of looking out in it. We went into like this brush, I guess, where there's more brush in one area, and I lost him and kept looking, and then there was another buck that come out, an 8-point, and I'm almost positive the next story we'll get into. I'm almost positive it's that same deer, but it come out, and they met up with each other, kind of started fighting a little bit, sparring,
Huh.
and then they just turned. I don't know if they got a whiff of the doe, but I had got the grunt call while they were out there because it was a really far shot, and I knew that they that they was bucks in the area, and I kind of just got on the grunt call like 2 or 3 notes, just trying to like, hey, I'm over here, and they just kind of sparred a little bit, and then turned and started walking straight at me and got within 100 yards, and I shot the 9-point. He looked the best to me, and ended up taking him.
Now, what?
So both deer ended up walking your direction after they got done sparring around?
Yes, they were within 100, or right at around 100 yards from me, standing side by side whenever I took the buck that's behind me.
So this was during like January South Alabama rut.
Yes,
time
it
frame,
was.
correct?
It was more around the peak of the rut down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hunter, do you know which hunt over which cut over he's talking about?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. The funny story is this is the first buck that he killed of this series, and we were, I think it was me and Hunter and maybe Glover from work, but we were actually at the same WMA at the same time, and was on the opposite end of it. Anyhow, he lets us know that he killed one, whatnot. We never did really get a chance to come see it before, they quartered it up and all that stuff, and they wasn't real privy to exactly where they were at the time, but a couple weeks after season went out, he told us where he was at, and I think I have probably climbed in the same cutover within 10 yards of the same exact tree that he climbed to. So it is it's definitely a good looking spot, but that was pretty neat. We all pretty much ended up at the same place within 2 different years. So
is that where me and you went out,
Yeah.
Brandon, and Locked got stuck during turkey season?
Pretty close. Pretty bad mud hole right there close to it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good area. It's grown up thick now. Bad thick.
Yeah.
Which a lot of that area is.
Yeah. So I guess that at the time that cutover, I want to talk a little bit about what it looked like then. How would you describe the cutover? This has been 3 years ago. How would you describe what the cutover looked like at that point?
So it wasn't a fresh cutover, like just that summer got cut. A lot of people like hunting those type cutovers, but I've never really liked messing with any cutover that's been cut within that year. I always like to let the cutover get, I guess you would say, waist to chest high, or even if you can get up in a tree high enough and it's head high, as long as you can see down in it, because those deer, I guess, feel like they're safe walking through it and hidden, instead of I feel like they would rather want to be in that than a fresh cutover because they feel hidden. But with you up in a tree, you can see across that cutover and you can see them walking through. But it was fresh, I guess. I don't know when they cut it. It's the first time I ever been there whenever I went and killed that deer, but I would say 2 to 3 years old, maybe. And no pine trees were in it, or there was, but they were really short, like they had gotten planted, like within that summer. So they were there, but mainly just sagegrass out in it and briars.
Yeah.
So quick question.
Yeah, that's about how it was
quick question.
Go ahead, Brett.
So are you hunting like a wood line that meets up to the cutover? And like, if so, how did you on this particular hunt, how did you approach that? And like, how did you, approach, how you were going to hunt this cutover? How high were you in the tree and things like that would give you the advantage to hunt something like this?
So, like it was dark whenever I went in there, but the way the woods were is it was cut over with really tall pines lining up both way. Like it was basically surrounding the cutovers, really tall pines. And
Okay.
I just walked through with my flashlight and just found a place, just found a tree that looked good to climb, nice size to be able to put a climber on. And
So you had never previously scouted this. You just went in blind, basically.
yeah, I had never been to this area before this
Okay.
morning. So it was just, I was going to it was a hardwood bottom where the guy had told me to go. And I just saw it on my Onyx and just, hey, let's just try this because I've had success in cutovers. So never
Yeah.
knew how tall it was. Like I could have went that morning and it would have been 10 foot tall and just wouldn't have been able to see in it. And all the cards lined up right and it just happened. So it was
That time of year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like obviously there were several deer there that day, and I mean that's the best kind of sign that you can find is live deer on the hoof, and if they're there, then that's it don't get much better than that. How many deer did you end up seeing that day? You remember?
I believe it was 13 deer and 7 of them were bucks. But
Ooh.
there was only 2 rack bucks. All the other ones were little 6 points, 4 points, but it was like 13 deer that morning and 7 of them was bucks.
Ethan's got that what I call you can catch a fish in a parking lot kind of look. Then sounds like
Yeah, in Walmart parking lot.
Walmart parking lot.
I guarantee you may hunt another lifetime and not ever get a day like that.
That's
especially
crazy.
to see 2 rack bucks, because the other one wasn't too far from the one that you got hanging behind you. Best I remember you telling the story.
Yes.
And this was on public land, right?
This was on public land, yes.
I mean, that's a very nice Alabama public land buck.
Another interesting thing about it is I went back, of course couldn't hunt the rest of that day because I'd killed the buck. And I just stayed at the camp. Well, I told the guys, I was like, hey, I'm going back the next morning. I'm getting that other one that was with him. And went back, pulled up. There was a guy sitting there, already beat me to the spot. And he allowed me to go and say, hey, I'm hunting right here. And it was basically in the same spot. So I told him, hey, we'll just, you hunt that spot. And there was another smaller cutover behind it. Ended up going to it. And there was another guy on it that ended up shooting a buck. I never saw it. I just got down as soon as he shot, and I walked down there and saw it. Just talked to him, see what he had, and he was tracking it, and he told me he was fine. He had his buddies coming, so I just eased out, and there was 5 people sitting in that cutover that I was at the morning before when I walked into it.
Yeah, you ought not shoot.
They'll track
Everybody can hear
you
you
down there.
That's right. They must have saw my
You go
truck
down there
with the deer on the back and just decided to come on back to that area.
You're gonna have to start running silencers or something
down there.
That's just the deal.
It's not a bad idea, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we'll jump into see what would that was 2020, 21. 2021 is when that year. So we'll fast forward to the year of 2022, and you had another pretty interesting story. So tell us about the year 2022.
So we had went down to that piece of public land twice before this hunt and hunted it in November and then also in December, and didn't have any success. We come back in January, and it ended up being the hunt to line up to be the same exact day that I killed that deer, just a year apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I hunted, I saved it. I wasn't even gonna go over there, not even looking at it. I still haven't been there. And hunted a day, and my dad was with me on this hunt. And he told me, "Hey, you need to go back to the spot. If anything during this hunt, you need to go back to that spot on that morning." So I was already planning on doing it. Went to the spot, climbed up in the same exact tree, and basically the same exact thing happened. I got up in the tree, up in the climber, was sitting there. Well, no, actually, I was in my saddle because I got into saddle hunt. So I was in my saddle in the same exact tree, and started hitting the grunt call that morning. Nothing happened. No, no deer movement in the cutover. About 8:30 rolls around, about the same time as that one come out. I just glanced up across the cutover, and there was a 8 point down there, and
Wow.
ended up getting him in the same exact trees, basically the same exact spot the other buck was standing, just a year apart.
Did you have to call him in to you a little bit to close that gap, or did he just come on his own?
No, he was so I'd been doing the grunt call throughout the morning from the time it got daylight till I think it was about in between 30 minutes to an hour before he finally showed himself. And he was actually walking, kind of looking, but he was on a steady walking. I knew there wasn't a doe that come through there because I'd been watching that area. And
Right.
so the best thing I can figure is he was coming looking for a fight. And like I was saying, whenever I killed that deer, the best I can remember by the way that the 8 pointer looked that was with that deer, it almost looks like the same exact deer that I killed this on this hunt. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
it was in the same area. So
That's wild.
So Ethan, real quick, you keep saying, you started blowing the grunt call, or you were kind of blowing it all morning long. What type of sequence are you using, or that you typically use? I guess I should say.
it's more of a like a long grunt and then some I guess tendon sounds, kind of short grunts. Which I mean,
Okay.
I got my grunt call with me if you'd like for me to show you how I do it.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I would like
so
to
basically
know.
it's not like what you would
So,
hear on the
first off, show us where you run the read at.
okay.
Show us where you run the read at first.
I was interested in that.
So, yeah, this call has an adjustable read, and you can do
You run it pretty much all the way
just
back.
a smidge above the brass collar.
Smidge
Yeah.
above the
Yeah,
bottom.
it's just basically all the way down, kind of right up above the brass. But
Yeah.
I always bring it all the way down and go up just a tad.
Just a smidge, okay?
That's
But
about where I run it.
the grunts, like it's not really. I kind of got it off my granddad because he's always been in the grunt calls, and he does one thing the whole morning, and it's not like what you'd hear on say the TV shows and stuff like that. Them trying to pitch stuff, but it's just a long grunt. And then I just do that like 3-4 times, like every 30 minutes.
So you
Okay.
do that little
That's-
series 3 or 4 times, and then you're going to wait 30 minutes and do it again.
That's basically the only thing I do.
Do you use the doe bleat? Do you ever use that?
I've tried it before, but I'm not really into being like I've never really used doe bleats, and I always have used grunt calls. So it's
Okay.
Yeah.
like I've tried it before, but haven't had success with it. But that's not saying that somebody else can do it, but I've just never really been in a doe bleat, so I always just stay with a grunt whenever I'm trying
Right.
to.
See, I'm almost the exact opposite. I use the doe bleat more than I use the grunt.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's people gravitate to what they've had previous success with,
Mm.
and then that's kind of where you stay.
Yeah, and I've heard
Sure.
of a lot of people that had good success with doe bleats, but just
Yeah.
with me, I've just never really had good success with doe bleats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You're having success, obviously, so stick with what you're doing.
Yeah. The two that I killed this
I
year
wouldn't change it.
did pretty much kind of the same sequence, just like a longer. And I actually used this is our prototype Horton made up, and it's actually got a doe reed in it, doesn't it, Horton?
Yes.
what they consider a doe reed. So let me see where it's at. So I actually just do like with this one, I run it. Let's see if it'll focus on that. I actually don't even put it on the reed. Y'all can see it. I run it all the way down. It's not even on the reed. See it?
Yeah.
So that way it kind of gets that real belly grunt. But I'll do something like, and it's basically the same thing that Ethan's doing. It's like a big, belly grunt type sound, real low, and then you do a couple tendon grunts, and then I'll do like that chasing sound like they're tending to a doe, and then come in right behind it and move it to that bleat sound and do 2 or 3, of that. Just kind of right after that. And both of the deer that I killed this year responded to that really, really well, especially Tyson. I mean, he was there almost immediately. And the big 7 that I killed, he actually came back to that same sequence like what you talked about, Ethan, that tending grunt. So, and he came in, kind of, you could tell he was looking for that other buck that was there with those does. So that's interesting. That's interesting that's your sequence.
With
you were right on the heart of Brett. Brett, you were right on the heart of y'all's rut in that area, right?
Yeah, right in the slap in the middle of it. Yeah, so I mean, it was
so.
And a lot of people think that that's the only time you use a grunt call. Well, I hate to tell you, but deer use vocalizations all year long. So, using and understanding the different vocalizations throughout the year, it can still be pretty beneficial to you. So,
yep,
a little pro tip there.
Which that's what I was about to hit on with you talking about all year, and just during. Say you're in South Alabama during November, they're not rutting, they're bachelor groups basically. And I run that same call. It's not just me using the grunt call during the rut. I sit there and use that grunt call all the time. And we got some private land down there, which we hunt it more than the public land. And they come to it the same exact way. They're just not in a rut mentality, I guess you would say. They're more looking. They feel comfortable with hearing, I guess, deer sounds and coming in than not hearing anything.
Right. Not necessarily looking for a fight. Yep. They're just coming in, seeing what's up.
Curiosity.
But with the long grunt with mine, it that first, why I do it first is basically to get their attention, I guess you would say. Just a loud, long grunt to just, they hear it and they're like, hey, I thought I heard a grunt, and then you hit them with that tendon, and I feel like that just gets their attention even more.
Right.
That's a pretty interesting theory. One thing that I try to do personally, and again it worked this past year, and it was kind of a mistake. I wouldn't call it a mistake, but like I didn't know the second deer was there. I just seen the first deer, but the biggest thing that I always try to keep in mind is I don't never want the buck to pinpoint me, and this is going to kind of bridge into what you were saying, Ethan. If I grunt one time and say he's got his head down and he's eating, if I grunt one time and he picks his head up and what I call posturing, like, hey, I heard that, I won't grunt again until he makes a move, because just like turkey and anything else, the more times that you do that, the more he can pinpoint exactly where you are. And I mean, mature bucks do what they do for a reason, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to try to circle downwind to that point. So I never try to give them any more than I have to.
Mm-hmm.
But if they hear it, they pick their head up and they look around and they posture. I'm going to stop right there until he puts his head back down and goes, to doing what he was doing before.
Mm-hmm.
So. But it kind of goes along with what you're saying. The first one kind of gets the attention, and then you're just using those little pop grunts or the tending grunts to give him just a little bit more. So that's pretty interesting to hear your mindset on that.
And talking about the getting his attention too, like if I can see a deer And this is just me playing around with small bucks. I mean, just little 8-pointer and stuff like that, just seeing how they would act with this actual grunt call. Is they'd be out there and actually take the grunt call apart and do a snort wheeze. Like if they're walking, I'll take it apart and just use this end right here and use a snort wheeze. And
hit it one time. Hit it one time. I want to hear it.
So it's nothing special,
I do that too.
but it's just. And then it just.
I mean, that's
money.
That's all you need.
I mean, those small bucks I've actually done it to, they jerk that head up and they look and they just bow up like trying to be big and bad. And they'll start walking around, just kind of coming right at me. And so they're responding to it.
I've noticed in the past 2 years, since we've kind of been putting the grunt call to work the way that we have, I've noticed that some of those 2-year-old bucks, I mean, they're vocal. I mean, we got one in South Alabama recorded that. I mean, he's doing a buck roar. I mean, he's just wearing it out. I mean, just ready to fight anything he hears or sees in the woods. It was crazy. So, yeah, that's a good time to learn, especially when they're being vocal like that. So, good stuff. Yeah, I use the top too, just like what you showed, Ethan. It's sometimes you can throw a little spit in there and get that little nasally sound to it too.
Snotty sound.
Yeah.
But
if you ain't got slobber running out of the other end, you need to do that.
Just spit out the other end.
Yeah. There you go. It's hard for them boys that dip snuff, but
and I'll actually in one of the deer stories that we're gonna go over or whatever, I actually did that to get it to come in, but it wasn't the one. I didn't end up getting it, but it's one of the deer that has been called in with this grunt call with me that has been used.
So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's the next story, right?
No,
it's 2023.
It is, but it's January of 23. I've got another buck that I'd killed right at the end of November. So that one.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the other buck while we're there. And you can go ahead and discuss that one.
That one is the last buck is the one that we had just talked about the 8-pointer that we had that I called in the year after. And but this the next one is North Alabama deer that I had gotten.
Nice.
Okay.
But that one it was on private land in North Alabama or Northeast Alabama where we live at. And I had been getting pictures of him. It's he was coming in basically nocturnal. And I didn't have a cutover to hunt. It's kind of a smaller piece of property. So if you was on the property, it's more of a creek bottom that runs through it. It's got hardwoods with a creek and just pine trees on the back end of it. And then there's a fresh cutover that's on another property or not a fresh cutover. It's probably I'd say 6 to 7 year cutover. So it's really thick. It's grown up and it just borders the property line. So I had noticed that the deer there's a bunch of trails that are leading into that. And I guess that's probably going to be where they're bedding, I guess, spending most of their time because they like the thick cover, being able to be hidden. And so I was in the creek bottom because if I don't have a cutover to hunt, a lot of times I like to hunt hardwoods on the edge of some pines or some thick cover.
Transition.
Yeah. So because mainly the best thing that have told people or whatever, you've got to find the does. If you can find the does during the rut, you'll find the bucks. So
yes, sir.
That's where all the does were hanging out during the day, just feeding on acorns. And so I was sitting there, been getting them on camera pretty heavy, but it was all at nighttime. That was the only deer I'd seen. So I was sitting there, I got out the grunt call, hit that same grunt sequence. And this was the quickest reaction that I had or success with the grunt call with getting a mature buck to come into it. So I hit that sequence, and it was probably 15 minutes later. I heard something behind me and turned and looked, and he had come up out of the creek and kind of like trotted about, I don't know, 20 yards, and then stopped and was just staring, just looking side to side, just looking for that buck, I guess. And that's when I just pulled up and I took him. I knew it was that deer that I'd been getting on camera and got him. And I mean, he come running in looking for that buck. He knew it was in that area and was just sitting there waiting for him. So, but
so this deer particularly, like the first two, you saw them and kind of grunted them over to you from 300 yards away. But this particular deer that you're talking about in North Alabama, you didn't see it or really know that it was anywhere close. You used the call, you called him up from I guess deep into the woods or whatnot.
Yeah, he come from back toward that where I thought they were bedding at. So I'm guessing he was in there.
Okay.
I don't know if he was bedded or if he was just hanging out in there. I don't know if there was does there or what, but I just kind of turn. So I always like turn, like I'll grunt here, turn around, grunt, just kind of like just trying to split my sound up to where everything can hear me.
Right.
And it was just a surprise. Like I just sat the grunt call down. I was sitting there looking around in front of me and just heard something. I thought it was two squirrels running each other, to be honest. And I just turned around and then all I seen was a rat coming up out of the creek bottom. And I was like, yep, there he is.
Yeah.
And he come up and was just staring and looking.
Them Bama squirrels ain't no joke.
No. Get you every single time.
Every time.
And you killed that one with a gun as well, Ethan?
Yes, that was with a rifle.
Do you do any bow hunting or mainly just gun hunt?
I do a lot of bow hunting. It's just I haven't because once bow season's out, I really put the bow down because I've had so many times that the deer, if it was within bow range, like they'd be out there and you could only get them with a gun. So basically whenever bow season comes out, like I'll bring it out 4 or 5 times during gun season, but especially if I'm going somewhere like during a rut, because I mean you have a big buck step out at 100 yards, you can't get him with a bow. But I'm trying to lean more toward it since I've gotten so many big deer, because now it's all right, let's try the challenge. Let's try to get him to come in closer. But
yeah,
which I'm pretty sure that last deer I was talking about, if I wouldn't have taken him whenever I did, he would have come running right to me. So that's just, he popped up and I just took him right there instead of letting him come on in, because it was one of those deer I'd been hunting since bow season. Been kind of back and forth with him. He was there when I wasn't, and I was there whenever he wasn't. So, but
crazy how that happens, huh?
Mainly just mainly just gun hunt. Once gun season comes in, it's all
that's the way.
With a gun.
That's pretty much the way we are. We're gonna try to, like Brandon mentioned, we're gonna try to do a bow hunt in the middle of a gun hunt, just because of the time of year that it'll be at that WMA down south. But you got one more, don't you? One more to talk about?
I do. That was in January on public land in South Alabama, and I didn't get to get this deer, but so I was down there looking. I went to that spot the day before that I'd killed the other 2 first deer in, and the cutover was just grown up. You couldn't see in it. So I just started bouncing around looking for places. And I walked into to a spot and found tracks. I mean, first good sign of tracks I'd found down there. And we come back to camp, and there was some more guys from the Piedmont area that were there with us. And I was telling them about this spot, and they're like, "Hey, man, that sounds a lot like where I'm hunting at." So I was like, well, all right. So I told him, I was like, well, I'll just
word got around.
Yeah. So they had already had their stands in there and everything. So they were like, well, since that's the only place you found, you're more than welcome to come into the spot with us, because it was a big area. And so there was a cutover that was mainly waist high to chest high, and but one of the guys were sitting in it, and it was kind of like a hill where it come up and drop back off. So he was hunting the left side of the hill, and he told me I could go down and hunt the right side because he couldn't see any of that. So that's what I'd done. We were sitting, I mean, we could yell at each other and have a conversation. We was like within 100 yards of each other. And that morning we went in. It was really cold. I can't remember the temperatures, but it was under probably 20 degrees. Wind was blowing, and sunlight came up, and the wind kind of died down a little bit. And I had got the grunt call, and I was like, I'm fixing to try to just do something here. So I pulled out the snort wheeze, hit them with a snort wheeze, and then started grunting. And there was actually 4 or 5 bucks that were around us that were just doing that, like you said, that roar grunt, just getting at it. And they kept moving. You could hear them. They were moving through the cutover, but you couldn't really see them because it was kind of surrounded by some thick cutover, and they were in that moving. And like I was sitting there with my rifle just turning. Every time I'd hear one, I'd turn trying to see him. And I had looked back toward my buddy that was in the tree stand, and I saw him stand up and turn around. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's locked in on something. So he shot, and then he just held his hand up, and I was like, oh yeah, we got that one. But the grunt call come in handy, and that happened pretty quick. I mean, it was within 10, 15 minutes on that one too, to get them all fired up. Yeah.
And you didn't hear any of those other bucks doing any kind of vocalizations until you started grunting?
Yeah, I started grunting, and I done the snort wheeze, started grunting. I don't know if that just made something just happen in them, but there was like 2 together that were working up this, I guess, kind of a slough in the hill, because it was kind of where it dipped down, but they were kind of down in it. And you could just hear them working that hill right there, just working back and forth. Then there was another one like right in front of me, and then you could hear one back toward him. And he said that buck, which I never saw the deer, but he was saying that as soon as he heard it grunting and turned around and looked, and he said it popped up on the hill, and he said it was like bowed up, like ready to fight, is the way he explained it. Yeah, just hair standing up on the back of his neck, and he ended up getting that one. But he was that made him a believer into the grunt call, because he never had one or anything like that, one of the harmony grunt calls, and he really had, I don't know if he has, but he was a firm believer in that grunt call after he killed that buck.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, his wonderful wife purchased him one that same exact weekend for his birthday.
Yep.
So
did
he is now a proud owner of one. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Sure enough, she got him an orange hat and a grunt call for his birthday, because I think it's pretty sure his birthday's in January. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yep. So do you happen to remember, just kind of touching on another subject, do you happen to remember the date? Was it close to that same time where you had killed the other 2 bucks previously?
yes, I'm pretty sure it was a day after, either a day after or a day before that same day, because all 3 of those hunts lined up to be on that same weekend with that date. And I can't remember if it was the day before. It wasn't the same day, but it was the day before or the day after, I'm pretty sure. It was somewhere right there on that date. But it seems like every single time that time down there, it's like the peak of the rut, I guess.
Yeah.
But without me going in,
Y'all know what I've got out of this conversation more than anything?
Follow
Find out
Ethan
what
around.
date that is and hunt next to Ethan and let him do all the work.
I was gonna say, follow Ethan around.
Follow Ethan around.
That's what my buddy said after he killed that deer. He said every single hunt, every year on this weekend, he says, I'm just gonna sit in the same tree you are. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we had talked previously after Tuesday's podcast, and it was me and Brandon and Horton. Horton, you had some things I know that you were, because you actually build the grunt call by hand. You do all that yourself.
Yep.
So I know you had some questions that you were pretty eager to ask, Ethan. So I'm going to let you take the stage and shoot, Mr. Grunt Call Builder.
10-4. Yeah, he already kind of covered one. One of them I was real interested just to kind of hear his sequence and kind of where he was running the call and how he was using it, that kind of thing. Always interested to hear because that call is so versatile and you can get so many sounds out of it. Always eager to hear what people's ear leans to as far as sounds and then kind of how they use it. So, like I said, we already covered that. We won't beat that horse, but next thing I had was really just, since you've been on from the jump, if you had any issues with it or, recommendations, as a company, I feel like we're always in the mindset of improvement and how we can change and get better. So we're always looking for that, whether it's something small or something big. So if you have any feedback, we definitely would love to get that from you. So as we move through the next years, we can kind of take that and push forward with it.
Yeah.
So just kind of turn it over to you and see what you got.
Okay. The grunt call is fantastic all the way around. The only thing that I would, if y'all ever was able to do it, is it's just a small little thing, but right here on the, I guess you would say, like right here on this little brim where it goes in, it's having a little notch or something to where it doesn't, because mine tends to like get open, I guess like that, you would say. And if
Right.
it could like lock in a whole lot better to keep it, because I kind of have, it's not a problem, but I kind of have a little bit of OCD and it just bothers me sometimes. I'm sitting there looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I hear you.
that's
I'm the
just,
same way, Ethan. Don't feel bad.
that's just a little small thing. But other than that, the grunt call is fantastic. It sounds like you can go
Awesome. Good to
you
hear.
can go to Walmart or Bass Pro Shops and you can buy a grunt call and you blow it and you're like, and then you hear a deer do it and you're like, man, this.
Hey guys and gals, did you know that you could be a part of the Harmony Outdoor Podcast? Yep, that's right. If you've had any success with our deer or turkey calls, we want to hear about it. Shoot us an email to harmonygamecalls@gmail.com sharing your success story and have the chance to be featured on one of our future podcasts. All right, back to the show.
Bass Pro Shop, stuff like that, all those big grunt calls, they don't really sound like a deer.
Yeah.
If you hear one. So the grunt call that y'all have, it sounds, every buck I've ever heard grunt or something like that, it's almost identical to the way this grunt call sounds. Like it sounds just like a deer. And I'm pretty sure that whenever Brandon, I bought it from y'all, he was asking me how it, the first time I ever blew it or something, and I blew it and I was like, dang, this is absolutely amazing. It sounds just like a deer in the woods.
Yeah.
So the grunt call
That's
itself,
awesome.
it's you hit a home run with that grunt call.
Good deal. Like I said, we appreciate the feedback and, we'll definitely take that suggestion and as we move forward and see what we can do to kind of fix that problem too.
So, Ethan, I had a quick question for you real quick before we wrap this thing up. What are some of the main tactics that you use, I would say, every time that you step foot in the woods, deer hunting, that you feel makes you successful? Because, I mean, you've had some success other than just using the grunt call. What are some of the tactics that you just say, hey, I do this every time because it works?
I guess I would say I would go out in the woods and you just basically got to find sign. That's the main thing. You got to find fresh signs showing that there is either a buck or there's multiple deer in this area. And I guess I would put it as, try to put your mind as of if you were a deer, like where you would go, what you like. You got to look for food source. Like where would you normally hang out if you were in as a deer?
Right.
And another thing with, don't really want to give a whole lot of secrets out about public land, but every single one of those deer that I talked about on public land, it was within 300 yards of the truck. I mean, you're right there.
You hunting too far from the truck, Brandon.
Yeah, apparently.
This sounds like a trending thing going on here.
It
Okay,
does. Well,
keep
there's
going.
several trending things between historical data and hunting closer to the truck. It's definitely trending information.
Sorry, Ethan, keep
like
going.
Yeah.
If you see people, they're like, you always talk to people, hey, I walked 3 miles back in the woods. And it's like, hey, did you see anything? No, not today. But then you have people that are like, hey, or some guy that comes pulling up with a buck, and you're like, hey, how far were you from the road? And he's like, dude, I was 50 yards from the road. Like
Yeah.
And we've
The secret is out.
Guys down there. We've talked to some guys down there that they said the best way to kill a buck is hunt the road. They said we climb up a tree and sit over the road, and there'll be people drive up underneath them and just throw their hand out, hey, how are you doing? And then he said 15 minutes later a buck comes out and they shot it. There was actually an old guy that told me that down there. It happened to him a bunch of times. Buck comes walking across the road right after a truck passes.
I will say in that general location, the biggest buck I've ever seen down there, I watched 4-wheelers and trucks go by that day. I was ground hunting in a little drainage, I guess you would say, probably 30 yards, 40 yards off the road. 4-wheelers, trucks just zooming by, and pretty good buck come out. I didn't get a shot at it. I was trying to get my wife to shoot it, and it didn't work out. But anyway, that's funny.
But yeah, you just basically gotta, because deer aren't dumb. They're the smartest creatures in the woods, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They know your exact move every time you go out in the woods. They hear that truck pull up and your door shut. They know exactly where you're going. So you basically that's just a challenge of it. You gotta outsmart them.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
if they know everybody's going a mile back in the woods, then they're just gonna stay. Right on the road. That's
funny.
Right there, just explaining it.
And we didn't set him up to say that either. That's funny.
Absolutely not.
Because like we have deer that live right here on my property down here at the lake, and they know when we leave the house. Not that they're out there watching us. They know when we're gone, and they'll come down and eat my wife's plants out of the front plant garden, whatever the crap you want to call it. But she always gets mad. She's like, them dang deer, they know exactly when we leave or go out of town because they'll come down here and eat all my hosta up and all that stuff. So it's funny. I was like, we feed them good enough. They shouldn't come down here and destroy the flower garden. But yeah, that's good stuff, man. That's interesting to hear you say that.
But yeah, that's mainly what I target. You just got to find where the deer are at. That's all you got to do to be able to kill deer.
Right.
Where, like I said earlier, wherever the does are at during the rut, bucks are going to be at. Same way with a turkey. If you've got hens in the area, there's going to be a gobbler come there. It
should be
wherever they're at, the males are going to be at. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, B. Rannon, you got anything else?
No, I had a few questions, but they got asked at some point in time. So, I think we've covered all the bases, and I'm tickled to death with where we ended up at. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, Ethan, we appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you taking your time out of your day and hanging out with us and telling us a little bit about your success with the grunt call and sharing some feedback with us to hopefully make a better product as we move forward.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna shoot it over to Brandon and let him take us on out of here. And you want to talk a little bit about next week, Brandon? Or I think when we come back, we're gonna be in Kentucky, right?
Yep, we should be back. Time this episode drops, we should be in Kentucky, and hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit for you there, from the heart of Kentucky. So, but when you're seeing this podcast, the next episode that we'll have coming up, will be with Grisshawk, or he's also known, his real name is Clayton Worrell. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Worrell.
Worrell. But anyhow, we'll have Mr. Grisshawk on. Probably going to talk a good bit of photography in that episode. But again, we do appreciate the time that y'all spent with us this week. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Obviously, again, like, subscribe, and hey, something else that's really important is to share these episodes. If you like to hear what we're doing, share it to a buddy, share it on your social media. Any feedback that we get along the way is going to help us to continue producing this stuff. So if you like what we're doing, let us know. If you don't like what we're doing, let us know, because we just need to get some feedback either way. But,
yeah.
Appreciate y'all tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week back with Mr. Grisshawk talking about some photography. So y'all good with all that?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Appreciate you
guys.
joining us, Ethan.
Yep. Appreciate it.